Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for the USISPF 4th Annual Summit. Please welcome the Chairman of the USISPF Board of Directors, Mr. John Chambers, to introduce our next session, a conversation with the Honorable Minister Chandrasekhar.
Good afternoon to everyone around the world. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I'm introducing one of the top ministers in India who, if I were to pick a job to be somebody's wingman, this would be the job I'd want to have. Rajeev Chandrasekhar is Minister of Electronics and Information Technology, but he's also Minister of Skills Development and Entrepreneurism. I want to congratulate you, Rajeev, on your new role. You're known as an amazing, dynamic leader, both in government and business, and somebody who's not hesitant to dive into issues once you know and understand them. When you think about the Prime Minister's vision of a digital India, a startup India, a inclusive India, a manufacturing India, really your four key function groups that you're focused on bring all those to life. It's unusual where you find somebody who's not only a very good, effective political leader, but also a large business leader and a startup leader. You understand the technology. You clearly understand the businesses and what really makes it go. How do you do job creation out of startups? And how does government and business work together in a often challenging way to make it much easier for both sides to achieve their career goals? I had a chance to talk to your brother-in-law this morning, Neal, and I have two brother-in-laws. If they would have said half as many nice things about me as your brother-in-law did about you, it's really a neat world. But Neal and I have worked together for decades. He could not have been more complimentary about you. When you think about India's future, you catch key new technology waves, areas such as artificial intelligence, which I think will be as powerful as the cloud and the internet, 5G, semiconductor ecosystem that we're all understanding how that's going to play differently, and a huge opportunity for India's future in high-tech electronics and manufacturing. And then how do you take your startup engine, which is up to 50 unicorns now, literally accomplishing more in this year in terms of unicorn status than in all the years that went before. So it's an honor for USISPF to work with you. We want to earn your trust and confidence, and it's an honor to have you on the session today. Rajeev, thank you very, very much for being here. I want to introduce the moderator for this session, Neal Mohan. Neal, you are a part of Google, but you also did DoubleClick, a very successful startup, and have been with Google for the last 10 plus years, like anybody else on USISPF that would span the skill sets that Rajeev have. And I look forward to you guys having a very interactive session. Rajeev, thank you once again for being part.
Well, it's great to be here with you, Minister. First of all, I want to start off by congratulating you on your recent appointment. As John said, it's really fantastic to have a technologist and entrepreneur lead this ministry. And we at Google and YouTube look forward to working with you in the ministry on the Digital India program. It's really fantastic. And one of the things that I want to say is that the ministry has really staked its reputation on investing in people, investing in technology, recognizing the power of technology and the impact that it can have on improving people's socioeconomic status, not just in India, but really setting an example for the world. And so I want to applaud you for all of that as well. I think this conversation is extremely timely given Prime Minister Modi's recent visit to the US and the UN, the Quad Summit, and just the evolving geopolitics in the region. And what I'd like to do is start off with something that is impacting not just the region, but the entire world. It's something that's top of mind, I think, for all of us, which is the global pandemic that we're all living through, the COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, it's had a huge impact on all of our lives in terms of how we live them online, consuming information, commerce, etc. Of course, it's had a really big impact on the overall digital ecosystem in India, as well as the Digital India vision. I'd love to hear your thoughts about how that's playing out.
So thank you, Neal. Thank you, John, for the introduction. Thank you for USISP for having me this evening. Look, I think I speak from an Indian perspective, and I don't think it's very dissimilar from what most of the world has experienced during the last 19 months, which is that we've just gone through the most difficult period in terms of not just the pandemic and the disease and the health challenges, but the deep impact it's had on lives, livelihoods, and the overall economic impact it's had on an economy that was, in our case, an economy that was just beginning to really ratchet up and take off after years of cleaning that the Prime Minister had to undertake from 2014. And having said that, we went through obviously one quarter of a sharp contraction, which is the lockdown quarter of April, May, June of 2020, where the economy shrunk by almost a fourth, by to about 23.9%. And it was necessary to, by that time, for us to build the capacities and the capabilities to fight this disease. But the interesting thing looking back at hindsight, I can characterize this as being interesting, but it was obviously difficult in those early days, has been the resilience and the robustness with which the economy has bounced back. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the investments in Digital India that the Prime Minister made in the early years of his administration and embedding technology into governance really helped tremendously during the pandemic in terms of how the government could reach out to the remotest families and deliver not just monies, but also food kits and rations all around the country. We had at one point about 800 million people being fed by the government directly and being targeted directly. Money in terms of subsidies and stipends were being given out. And the work for wages programs were being increased for migrants that were going back. So in a lot of ways, I don't want to take away from obviously the successes in healthcare and all of what we did in that space, but digital and the technology investments that were made in government governance and generally overall in society and communities across the country really has helped the country bounce back. And Neal, and I'm sure that one of the sectors in the Indian economy that are just going galloping has been the tech space. And apart from the short-term setbacks in the first 2 quarters of the pandemic, the tech space has really taken off. And for a lot of people, there has been a reset of ambitions, and they look to the post-COVID world as a world full of opportunities in digitization and all of those other things that are now looking like real opportunities to pursue.
No, I completely agree with what you said, and it's been remarkable to observe that, Minister, over the last a year or so. And as you know, at YouTube, we've tried to play our role, working in concert not just with your ministry, but the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, to make sure that reliable and accurate information was available to all citizens across the country. Billions and billions of information panels and playlists and things that would give a high quality information about how to get vaccinated. The vaccine drive in India has been, nothing short of remarkable. How to get health care, et cetera. And so we look forward to continuing to do that as the country and the world emerge from the pandemic. Building on what you said towards the end there, there's obviously the pandemic. There's also just the changing geopolitical environment in the Asia Pacific region. That, of course, is going to have an impact on the existing U.S.-India ICT trade relationships, how that plays out. I'm assuming from your perspective, there's lots of opportunities as well as challenges. So if you could talk a little bit about how you see that relationship changing as a result of everything that's happening in the region, and also just the movement towards more open and collaborative data systems. We've talked about things like intellectual property, privacy, et cetera, in the past. I'd love to get your thoughts on that as well.
Look, without getting into the trade conversation directly, Neal, look, I see this in rather simplistic terms. I think, and I've said this pre-COVID in the context of conversations around the Quad when I was not a minister, but I was a member of parliament. I've said that the future of technology has to be, in a sense, not left to, some sort of dynamic that is out there, driven only by entrepreneurs and driven by entrepreneurs and investors. It has to be in a very proactive manner by the four democracies of the Quad, India, US, Australia, Japan, and any other country that thinks along those same lines or have open communities and open societies. They have to play a much more proactive role in shaping the future of technology, shaping the future of where the internet goes, how the internet develops and how the internet remains open but safe and trusted. And I have maintained this line for many, many years, and I continue to hold that position even today, post-COVID. So I think at the heart and at the front and center of the conversation, Neal, I believe that there is a political need for political understanding between these 4-5 countries in terms of the future of technology. And I say this because in 2010, for example, I don't know if you recall, there was an attempt by some countries to move the regulation of the internet or the management of the internet from ICANN to the United Nations. I don't know if you remember that. And it was led by a country to the north of us. And there was quite a bit of a debate about whether India should join that movement. And I was a member of parliament at that time, and I opposed it tooth and nail. So there are many of these things that, looking forward, countries like India, US will have to work together, both at the political level and at the business and entrepreneurial level. Now, having said that, I think the point you make is that as today the reality of the power of the internet and e-commerce and all of them play itself out in India, there is clearly emerging needs for dialogues on data protection, cross-border data flow. What kind of construct do we have which does not take us back into these islands on the internet rather than what was envisaged of the internet many, many years ago. So I think there is a need for that type of a conversation to really start in a formal way, Neal. And I've said this earlier, and I say this again today. In terms of where jurisprudence and the legislative and the legal framework and the ecosystem of sort of bilateral understandings between countries like the US and India will go, I think we are all currently today as countries at different levels of understanding and evolution or maturity, if you want to call it that, in terms of how we see the internet and how we see the future of technology. And I think part of this thing of dialoguing between the countries is to arrive at some steady state global understanding of what the role of government should be, what the role of regulators should be in terms of regulating intermediaries on the internet, in terms of responding to user harm, what should be the protocol. I see the risk, a real risk, that if countries don't talk about this in whatever forum, bilaterally, and arrive at some understanding, that we create these little islands of very, very differential rules and regulations that either create opportunities for arbitrage or then have one set of consumers disadvantaged over the other set of consumers.
No, that's thank you for all of that. I mean, I think the last point you hit on there is something near and dear to my heart. Certainly at YouTube, my number one priority is to live up to our responsibility as a global platform. What you highlight in terms of data flows and protecting consumers, not just in India or the US, but all over the world is a top priority. And in terms of the vibrant ecosystem, the numbers really speak for themselves. I mean, I was reading, over 600 deals, $11 billion worth of investment in the country around technology. As you point out, I think it's amazing. At Google, we're trying to do our part around the $10 billion, Google for India digitization fund over the next 5 to 7 years, which of course we look forward to working with you on as well. I know another area that's near and dear to your heart, because you've spoken about this publicly many times, is skilling. And even before the pandemic, India was a hub of human capital, intellectual capital, skills, talent for the entire world. And of course, COVID has impacted that many times in ways to accelerate that trend, but also in terms of challenges such as worker migration, supply and demand imbalances, etc. So I'd love to get your thoughts on what role technology and the government can play in terms of skilling as the world emerges from the pandemic and in the years ahead.
Absolutely. As much as passionate, I'm passionate about technology, and I've spent all my life in technology. This responsibility of skilling and entrepreneurship really for me is, I hate to say this, it's even more exciting than being part of the technology ministry. And the vision that our Prime Minister laid out in 2015 is really, really, really inspirational for somebody like me. In that today, when I travel around the country, I can see, I meet so many youngsters who consider skilling as a really, truly aspirational ladder to opportunities and growth in life. Whereas if you just flash back to 10 years ago, or 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, before 2014, for most children in India, there was just really one runway. You went to school, you did your high school, and then if you were capable financially or temperamentally to do it, you went into higher education. And if you couldn't do that, you just dropped out and then looked for something to do. And over the last 7 years, we have built now this real tremendous framework where children can start skilling and choose either one of those three options for life in terms of life choices. You can go down the higher education route, which you and I have done, and most traditional Indians have done over the last several decades. But you now have the opportunity of just saying, fine, I don't want to do higher education. I'd skill myself. I do coding. I would do artisan. I do handicrafts. Whatever. I have 4,000 plus skilling programs that the government of India has put together that are being run by a network of almost 20,000 training centers around the world, around the country. And kids are just, quite happy to do that. And in all of my travels around the country, I am really, really, woken up to the fact that there is a real aspirational generation that has been built on the back of this program of skilling that the Prime Minister launched in 2015. Having said that, let me say this, that there are many challenges in terms of how we take skilling in the post-COVID world. And you hit the nail on the head. During COVID, skilling took there was a big break put on the progress on skilling. And we have quickly moved to a model of blended skilling, where there's a significant amount of digital sort of content that is being driven. But there are many skilling programs that just require real-life labs and workshops and things like that. But a large amount of the coursework is migrating to digital. And with the new education policy that the government has announced a year ago, skilling and education sort of get integrated. And there is a roadmap now for a digital education and skilling platform that the government of India is building and will launch very shortly, which will just take this to the next level in terms of access for 1.3 billion Indians to skilling and education programs around the country. So I'm particularly excited about where we are. On the 15th of July, just a week after I took over, the Prime Minister gave us a direction that we need a new approach in the post-COVID world. The ministry and the team here have quickly worked on redesigning and reimagining skilling, and we believe that we know where we want to go with that. And I'll just add one last point, Neal, which is that it is clear today for the technology sector, for example, that we are struggling with the demand-supply gap that has suddenly hit this industry, hit the tech sector in the last 1 year. And there is a huge gap that is developed as a demand for almost 1 million new engineers and coders and developers in the tech space that we see in the next up to 2022. That is being met, by lateral hires, upskilling, training, and all of that. So there is currently a little bit of a crisis of shortage, which is partly self-imposed by the industry for not maybe planning it enough, partly by the fact that the post-COVID world has thrown up this huge opportunity that nobody saw coming. So I think it's a good problem to have, not necessarily a good problem to continue to have.
Thank you for that, and the vision, the Prime Minister's vision, and yours is incredibly inspiring. There, as I was preparing for this conversation, I found that just on our platform on YouTube, the amount of people researching and watching video content around careers and skills has grown 60% year on year, just in the last year. Obviously, some of that was COVID, but a lot of it is exactly what you said, which is using digital platforms all over the country to improve yourself, make your life better for your sake and your family's sake. Another related area is the creative economy, and obviously India for hundreds and thousands of years has been a bastion of cultural capital. How do you see digital platforms, the technology industry at large, playing a role in terms of the creative economy, in terms of projecting cultural capital throughout the country, but all over the world, and also creating economic opportunities, as you talked about, for creative types all over India?
Oh, no, look, I think, Neal, I think you know this even more than I do, that the digital and technology have completely upturned the conventional creative models, creative industries in India. There was a lock on all of these things for many decades by a few companies and a few creative names, and digital just turned the whole thing on its head. And today we have creative content being put out there by really new faces, new names that are just. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. So no, I think there's absolutely no doubt on the fact that digital technology, the internet, and the connectivity that all of this, and now devices that are inexpensive, and the increasing internet penetration of over 800 million plus that we have in India is really upturned the entire creative space, and it is created a new wave in terms of innovation and creativity, the likes of which we've never seen. I have never seen in my lifetime in India this kind of creative explosion. And I just wanted to make another point linked to the earlier question, Neal, which is about how even in the remotest parts of India today, students and youngsters walk up to me in these meetings that we have and these chats that we have, and they say, look, why don't you take skilling onto YouTube? Or why don't you take it onto some of these platforms where we can, download it? Because we are actually learning a lot of these skills by going to YouTube and some of these open platforms. So, there is a significant behavioral change that a lot of which the government is playing catch up with. And you would think that we're all, geniuses sitting down here in Delhi, and we figured out what the next 2-3 years is going to be. And I can assure you that digital is making everybody in government and everybody that is engaged with consumers and citizens really play catch up. We are really reinventing our models, whether they're in skilling or creativity or producing content. I caught a little bit of what Anurag was saying in the previous session. And this is a fact that the disruption is deep, the disruption is permanent. And I think this is the new normal, that technology is creating new heroes every day, whether they're unicorns in the tech space or they are, content creators in the creative space.
Yeah, no, that is truly amazing. And I think the fact that you have the insight that it is, the people and the citizens that really lead the way is I think really bodes well for the future. I know we need to wrap up here, but it's amazing. Even on our platform, we have 140 creators in India that have over 10 million subscribers, which is truly amazing, the power of this creative economy and what it can do for everybody. I want to thank you, Minister, for making the time. I look forward to working with you and your ministry on all of these efforts. And I think sort of the key theme really that emerges is the combination of people and technology to really move the ball forward on behalf of people's lives, but really set an inspiration for the world. Best of luck in all of those endeavors. And I want to also thank the U.S.-India Strategic Partnership Forum for having me and allowing for this conversation. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Neal, and thank you.
Thank you, everybody.